if you want to have a nice experience of life, I think, the key is to be of service to others and to take a sincere interest in other people. And we're not wired that way. We're wired to take a sincere interest in ourselves. So it wasn't necessarily natural, but I was able over time to rewire myself in that way. And what I found is that every part of my life gets better when I think not about what I can get, but what I can give.
Welcome to Game Theory, how play is changing everything. A new video podcast from Lightspeed and Goldman Sachs in partnership with McKinsey, where we sit down with some of the world's leading executives across gaming and interactive media to speak about the defining companies of the industry, the leaders behind them, and how play has been changing consumer behavior and tech innovation for decades. I'm your co-host, Moritz Baier-Lentz.
And I'm your co-host, Hemal Thaker.
And today we're joined by Strauss Zelnick, CEO of Take-Two Interactive.
Pleasure to be here.
We'll start with a non-gaming topic.
Okay, good.
Many people may know this, but not everyone. You're very much also into fitness. I think you've graced the cover of Men's Health once or twice. But what is it about sports and fitness that fascinates you and has become a real big part of your life at this point?
It's a great question. I actually wasn't an athlete growing up. I was a student, and I wasn't sporty at all. And then when I graduated from college and I was in grad school, I was sitting, and I was always thin. I was sitting around with some friends drinking a beer, and one of them said, "You have a paunch." And I was like, "Paunch? I'm skinny. I've always been skinny." He said, "Well, you may be skinny, but I'm here to tell you you have a paunch." Looked down. I looked down. I was like, well, that's not good at the age of 22. So the next day I started getting some exercise and just sort of slowly developed into something that I really enjoyed. And then when I was in my 30s, I started exercising with other people, and that was a game changer. And now I have a whole group of people I work out with. Worked out with you on more than one occasion, so you know what that looks like. And it's a big part of my social life and sort of elevates every part of my life. So it was really more about the process than the result. Although the result ultimately is good too, which is that I feel great most of the time, almost all the time. I tend not to get sick most of the time. I can, despite my age, I can carry myself through life without feeling like or looking like I'm about to fall over. So it's a good thing. And
beyond this, commitment to fitness, which you're sharing with others, and you make yourself very accessible through that as well. And I'm proudly reporting that I've made it through all but one workout.
I forget, which one did you make it through?
One was a little
dicey.
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that one. Yeah. You were training.
This is getting cut, okay, guys.
You were training. You had a good excuse.
Yeah. So you're using this domain as an area where you apply mentorship, and I would consider you a mentor as well. And you've been pushing me professionally. You've been pushing me in sports as well. I've done this crazy thing where I've run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 consecutive days, which is 168 hours to complete a full distance marathon, including in Antarctica and on every other continent. And my personal low point was probably between marathon number 5 and 6. And that very moment, at one of the airports, I got this text message from you, and it just said, "Don't let me down now." And I'll admit it was a little bit scary too, but I mean, it's just
sounds like I had really good timing.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show that you had been following and you care, and this is something that I've heard from other people too. So, there's a lot of time that goes into taking care of the development of others. Like, what is it about that I think, similar to sports, you've dedicated a lot of your time to?
Well, I appreciate the question, and it's I have to be careful in answering it because it sort of falls into the category of interview questions for putatively successful people that I don't like, which is sort of how and why are you so awesome? And remember, we're all totally flawed and not awesome in so many ways. So I just want to take a minute to beg the question. But I think that what led me to try to be helpful to other people is that I was blessed with professional success pretty early in my career, very early in my career. And I had the presence of mind, first of all, to do one thing, which is to remember how hard it was to break into the entertainment business myself. And as things did begin to go well, I decided, look, the sort of minimally what I can do is have an open door for anyone else. And that was just a commitment I made to myself. So anytime anyone reaches out, I respond. I mean, it's how we got to know each other, candidly. And I've always just maintained that commitment. The second thing, maybe more importantly, was I'm happy with my career and I'm proud of what I've done. And I don't mean to imply otherwise. At the end of the day, though, despite leading teams that were responsible for the biggest hits in every entertainment business there is, at the end of the day, what I do for a living is make light entertainment. And, when I'm gone, that'll not be remembered. But if I could actually help someone or help many people in a way that's meaningful, like in a way that maybe is really meaningful, so much so that it maybe changes someone's life, then it doesn't just change their life, it changes the lives of people around them, their partner, perhaps their children, maybe friends or colleagues. And in that way, someone who ultimately has pretty small purview, because as entertainment executives, come on, we're not inventing anything. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a politician. But in this way, this is my way of potentially making a real difference. And that does speak to me. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, I was talking about my company today in terms of leadership and getting stuff done. At the end of the day, if you want to have a good life, if you want to be good at sales, if you want to be a good executive, if you want to lead people, if you want to have a nice experience of life, I think, the key is to be of service to others and to take a sincere interest in other people. And we're not wired that way. We're wired to take a sincere interest in ourselves. So it wasn't necessarily natural, but I was able over time to rewire myself in that way. And what I found is that every part of my life gets better when I think not about what I can get, but what I can give. Again, I'm imperfect in the extreme, but I do try to do that. I'm not super excited about the notion of, domination. I like connecting with other people and learning from them and building genuine, warm relationships. I'm blessed to have many of them. Not every relationship I have falls into that category, but frankly, most do.
We'll make note that the domination of Take-Two is purely accidental.
Well, success, isn't accidental. And I'm really ambitious and driven. Again, though, the things I'm most proud of are being of service to our consumers, being of service to my colleagues, being of service to my shareholders. And sure, if I do all that really well, I will benefit as well. And I am, for sure, I'm grateful for whatever benefits I've obtained, and there have been many. But you just can't start there. You just can't start there. I was talking to a friend, actually a mentee, who was running a company, and his board was just all over him about earnings per share. And no one was talking about the mission. And ultimately, it wasn't as successful an experience as he would have liked, because they weren't focused on the mission. At Take-Two, we're focused on our mission. Make the best entertainment on earth. That's our mission. Make the best entertainment on earth. Everything else will follow from there. Now, we do have a 3-part strategy: be the most creative, be the most innovative, be the most efficient. If you only focused on creating the best entertainment and you blew up your balance sheet and your P&L in so doing, that's not going to benefit everyone or anyone. But our mission is make great entertainment. That's why we're there.
Matt Bromberg, who we had as one of our guests here on this episode, CEO of Unity, he said, let's just fall in love with doing the right thing, which sounds in similar words to what you're pursuing here as well. But in the spirit of shareholder value, GTA 6 is coming out soon. But the story of Take-Two is really so much broader. And I think there's been so much diversification in terms of IP, obviously, live services, the transition to digital downloads over the years. Take-Two in many ways has been pioneering many ways that really catapulted the video gaming industry forward, drove massive multiple expansion over the years. So take us back a little bit, maybe to that journey all the way back into the 90s. And let's talk a little bit about that, how Take-Two grew to what it is today.
Well, I wasn't involved with Take-Two until 2007. So I can talk about the 90s, but through a different lens. In 1993, I left the the job of president of 20th Century Fox to go to a pre-revenue video game company because I believed that having run 2 studios, thankfully, successfully for 7 years, the next big thing was the video game business. And I wanted to get in on the ground floor. Now, it wasn't precisely the ground floor. Trip Hawkins got in on the ground floor. Bobby Kotick got on the ground floor. I was maybe got in on the first floor. But that's what led me to Crystal. And that was a successful run. And then I left to turn around a huge record company, BMG, and use the BMG platform to start BMG Interactive in 95 and built that up. But pre-release, the then CEO of Bertelsmann, which was the parent, actually insisted that I divest the division. And we divested the division to Take-Two Interactive, which was a tiny little public company. And one of the titles that was developed inside BMG Interactive but not released was Grand Theft Auto, the first Grand Theft Auto. And it was, of course, released by Take-Two Interactive, and that became, the beginning of the journey. That was in 1999. So I was not involved, of course, until we took over Take-Two, a very troubled company indeed, in 2007, where there was the successful IP that Grand Theft Auto had become, developed by Rockstar Games, led by Sam Houser, who still leads it to this day, highly successfully, obviously. And then there was NBA 2K, which was small but successful, and that was it. Everything else was not good. Everything else was a drag on earnings, and the company was under investigation for business practices by 4 government agencies simultaneously. The then chairman and CEO had been indicted. The CFO was under investigation. The company was under criminal investigation. And that was what I walked into in 2007.
And now it looks a little different.
Well, I mean, in that we're highly compliant to begin with. And we have 11 franchises that have each sold over 5 million units with an initial release. We have the highest grossing entertainment property of all time with the Grand Theft Auto franchise, thanks to Rockstar Games, and then numerous other big hits, NBA 2K, Borderlands, BioShock, Civilization. And of course, on the mobile side, through our Zynga division, everything from Words with Friends, Empires, Puzzles, and most recently Match Factory and Color Block Jam. So we've got this huge array of owned intellectual property, perhaps the best in the interactive entertainment business. And on the financial side, when we took over the company in 2007, it had $700 million in revenue, was making huge losses, about a $700 million market capitalization. And today, the revenue is in the $5.5 billion range, and it's expected to grow materially in the coming years. And the market cap as of today is around, equity market cap is around $38 billion-ish.
It's amazing success. Where does it go from here? Tell us a little bit about the long-term business
world domination.
strategy. Well done.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
No, listen, where does it go? We've got a release schedule we're really proud of. We've told the market we expect to generate record results in the coming years. We expect to have a big step up. So I think the next few years ought to be driven by organic growth. Expect, of course, that our balance sheet will become a lot stronger. As a result, we hope to be a net cash company. Right now, we're modestly a net debt company, not in a way that's in any way over levered. It's very modestly levered, but it is levered. I'd prefer to be net cash. And at that point, we could turn our attention to inorganic growth if it makes sense. Now, we've only done a few deals, a couple of small ones, a couple of medium-sized ones, and one very big one. And all of our deals have worked out. It's pretty unusual for corporate M&A, very unusual in the interactive entertainment business. And all of our deals, moreover, have been financially accretive, which you would think is sort of table stakes for an acquisition. Believe it or not, well, you know this, given what you do for a living.
Painfully aware.
Believe it or not, a lot of people will do dilutive deals that are permanently dilutive. It makes zero sense to me. I've never done that.
Makes a lot of sense for their ego.
Well, I think that's right. It's empire building. But the other thing that will do it is if you compensate a management team either in a discretionary way, which is a disaster, or on an EPS basis, pretty much a disaster, you can get these really nonsensical results. Our management teams are compensated on EBITDA versus plan in a given year. That's short term. It's really for people who really can't drive the overall value of the company. And anyone who can really drive the overall value of the company, myself included, is primarily compensated through TSR versus NASDAQ. In our case, that's our market. So we have to outperform. And if we outperform the market, ultimately we're here for the shareholders, then we get paid. And if we don't get paid, as it should be. But discretionary comp, where a board says, well, I love that blue sweater, so I'm going to pay you X dollars. Or EPS-driven comp, which basically says, do stock buybacks even if they're dilutive. I mean, you're going to get the predictable result because human beings, given a choice between following the words and the money, follow the money. So what we try to do is have a stated strategy that makes sense, powerful culture that's attractive and appealing, and economic incentives that are consistent with shareholders' goals, but also are tied to the strategy and the culture. They should all go together.
Reminds me of that Warren Buffett quote, where if you want to see the outcome, follow the incentives. So tell us a little bit about your structure. You mentioned clearly have multiple labels and developers doing different things. How have you organized yourself? How do you keep that going in a creative but efficient manner? Curious how you've built that. And obviously it's a little bit different than how others do it as well.
It's pretty straightforward. We have 3 labels, Rockstar, 2K, and Zynga. They're managed highly independently, and they sit within the sort of the Take-Two family. Activities are unrelated to development and marketing, typically are centralized. So that would be, administration, legal, finance, corporate IT, not game-driven IT, and anything related to making the entertainment products and marketing them, that would be within the label's discretion. We have a warm and connected environment. And the way we achieve that is we have a weekly meeting that all business leaders attend across all labels. And the rule is that you bring everything to the table. So I don't have to have, 20 one-on-ones a week, which would basically occupy, 20 hours of time, because we have a 1-hour meeting where everything is brought to the table. And of course I follow up as needed. And if people have personal issues, we have one-on-one meetings. If we're there to discuss the business of the firm, though, everyone brings that together. And what that does is make sure, first of all, everyone's informed so we don't have unnecessary conflicts. It also really reduces sort of the political content of the company. And remember, we've shown up with everyone having identical incentives. So when everyone has identical incentives, they're generally speaking going to go in the same direction. Now, if you have an agreed upon goal, you have an agreed upon strategy, you have an agreed upon culture, and you've the agreed upon financial incentives that wrap around all that, exactly where you're going to disagree on tactics. You may disagree on tactics, but you know what? Reasonable people can generally sort that out. Now, sometimes we can't sort it out, and sometimes there's some unhappiness, but it's pretty rare. And everyone knows, like, yeah, but we're pulling in the same direction. You want to blow that up? Try discretionary comp. That's the first thing that'll blow it up. What I like to say about that is, honestly, like, if you don't want to smile at me in the hallway, it's not going to affect your compensation. I prefer a nice smile. But it's, I don't have to like you. You don't have to be my friend. Deliver the results. Help the company deliver those results. You're going to get paid. Now, bad behavior, we don't welcome that. We don't, and really bad behavior, we don't allow that. Eccentricity, bring it on. That's great. We're an entertainment company.
Are you eccentric?
I'm not eccentric in the least. I'm utterly predictable and somewhat boring.
It's actually quite interesting that a private equity guy who's not a creative himself has so successfully managed this conglomerate of creative franchises. What is the secret behind that? Or maybe the magic is in the mix.
So first of all, I sort of backed into being a private equity guy in my 40s. Remember, I was always an entertainment executive first and foremost, but it's fair. It's a fair question. And I think I really wanted to be a creative type, by the way. I was a singer-songwriter as a teen until I had the presence of mind to realize I had no talent. Then I was a writer. I have more talent than that. And then I was a writer. I dabbled with the notion of being a performer. And it became clear I had no talent, but I appreciated talent. And I think it's a remarkable state of affairs, because I've been in every entertainment business there is, and the teams that I've managed have been responsible for the highest hit ratios in every entertainment business there is. And I've had nothing to do with any of the properties, really. I mean, nothing. I didn't read scripts when I was in the movie business. I hate to say it. I didn't make TV shows. I didn't produce music. I produced one record which is a Carly Simon track. Believe it or not, I did produce it, but that was odd and once. But I had nothing to do with, and I certainly not responsible for making video games. So what's the common thread? And I think the common thread is the approach that I just described, this intersection of, a stated strategy, culture, compensation, compliance, and sort of a rational approach to running what can be a chaotic business. So there's that. But I think the other piece is, if I have any talent, my talent is correctly perceiving talent in others, and then finding a way to connect with empathy with those talented people, encourage them to work within the system I'm managing, and then lead them to do the best work they've ever done by not only enabling them to pursue their passions, but insisting that they pursue their passions, and making sure that we have a backdrop of a solid financial structure so that you can live to play another day when you fail. When, not if, because you will fail. It's a volatile business. And by having the financial means to support the teams through that volatility, we can give them comfort that they can play another day, try again, take appropriate risk.
So you've built this amazing portfolio within that context of these robust intellectual properties that have, in many cases, lasted decades. How have you done that? Not everyone has that.
Well, again, I mean, first of all, it's not, I'm going to avoid the use of the personal pronoun. It's how the team's done that. And I think when I first showed up at Take-Two, we did something that was really novel, which we said, we're not going to annualize any releases except for sports entertainment releases. That was anathema to the business. Everyone thought I was insane. However, again, going back to our strategy of making the best entertainment and being the most creative, innovative, and efficient company, that does not square with annually churning out a title that can't be created effectively in 12 months. We established a willingness to wait for perfection or a product that was as close to perfect as it could be. So Grand Theft Auto can be perfect. It can get a 97 or a 98. We have other titles that are never going to get that. So to develop them at time and expense to try to achieve that, that's unrealistic. But they need to follow their destiny and to have the support that can get them to be as successful as they can be. So for example, we got a terrific Metacritic score with this year's release of WWE 2K. It's, I think, the highest scoring sports entertainment title so far this year, or perhaps in the last 12 months. If not, it's very, very close. And it's 80 or 81 currently. That's a great score for a title that has recurrent consumer spending opportunities inside. And that's a reflection of what that title can be when it's developed really well. We invested heavily to get that title to that place. We took a lot of risk, actually, and we had a couple of years where we didn't do very well in supporting that development, that growth, that investment. But our mission required us to take an approach that I think no one else would have taken. I'm pretty sure that we're the only company in our space who can say that every iteration of every one of our franchises has been bigger than the prior iteration. And maybe that's not true 100% of the time, but it's very, very close. That's atypical for the business. That's a reflection of being willing to invest in sort of the platonic ideal of what that property can be, to take that risk, to sometimes disappoint the market when we wait a little bit, sometimes disappoint consumers when we wait a little bit. But that's the way we've done this.
So you mentioned recurrent revenue as part of your description of building out iconic franchises. Clearly, Take-Two's gone through a shift over time, more towards that direction, sort of recurrent, not even just revenue, but engagement. What's driven that? How are you thinking about that going forward? And sort of what was the impetus that drove that?
Well, the impetus, of course, is to serve our customers, is to deliver the best entertainment anyone can create. If the impetus had been make more money, we would have failed. Like, no one can get behind that mission. No one. And so our view was the video game business when I started and when I showed up at Take-Two years later looked like the movie business. Spent a lot of time and a lot of money working on a property, complete it, bring it to market and hope for the best, and then go to the next one. And if you were waiting, as we were, as I said, for perfection, it could be 3, 4, 5+ years in between iterations. And so we realized that it would be great if there were an effective, efficient way to keep customers engaged with the properties they loved. And the first example, which you alluded to earlier, was GTA 4, where Rockstar came up with the notion in association with Microsoft of doing downloadable add-on content. So Rockstar developed 2 episodes, and they were pretty successful. But that was really what ushered in this era of downloadable add-on content. No, there had been expansion packs before, but they were physical and they had all the attributes of physical goods and all the challenges with production and economic order, quantity, and the like. Digital downloads didn't present that problem. And it was pretty soon after where Take-Two said, look, in the event we have a hit, we should be able to give more of that hit to consumers and create a thread in between these huge tentpole releases. And that was really the strategy. Create a thread that engages consumers and gives them what they want, right? So remember, what was our incentive? Giving consumers what they want. Our incentive was not make more money. It happened that it created, an economic value in success. It was only, a quick movement from there to virtual currency in game. And the first time we tried that was with NBA 2K in, I want to say 2011. I may be mistaken, right around then. And it was a test. We had no idea how it would do. And it ended up being very successful. And then, of course, virtual currency was embedded for the first time in Grand Theft Auto Online for Grand Theft Auto 5. And again, that turned out to be much, much more successful than we ever expected. Now, on the mobile side, that, in-game payments, that's the story of the business because it's free to play business. But we weren't in the mobile business in a big way until mid-22 with the acquisition of Zynga.
Tell us a bit about that. I mean, it's the biggest inorganic milestone in Take-Two's history. So
it was when it was done, the biggest deal actually done in interactive entertainment, then quickly eclipsed by the Microsoft acquisition of Activision. So we had a record for 3 days or whatever. But it's been a great deal. I think you could argue that we missed the boat on mobile. If you go back, and if anyone, if you're bored and you want to look, I was skeptical about the mobile business when it was really stood up by Zynga, by Mark Pincus in 2011, 12. And I was skeptical because it was sort of presented as a direct marketing business dragging entertainment along. And I believe in entertainment businesses that have monetization attached. But the truth is I missed the boat. Now, it probably didn't matter because in 2012, I was still pretty occupied with the turnaround and buildup of Take-Two as it was. We still had a very tight balance sheet. It's not like we could have, decided, wow, like great thing to do here would be to invest in a new business that we don't understand. But it is true that we missed the boat on mobile, and I missed the boat on mobile. Well, eventually it became clear to us we had to be in the business, so we acquired Social Point, Two Dots, and other small acquisitions. But even so, mobile was 10, 12% of our business. And in 2020, or 2019, when I started getting really quite focused on this because our balance sheet would support the notion of doing something larger, I looked and said, look, we're clearly a leader in console and PC, and there's every reason to believe we can play that role. But if you roll the clock forward 10 years, which is my job, right, as a CEO, as a strategist, like that's your job. Look 10, 20 years down the road, not tomorrow, not for the quarter. I couldn't imagine just being essentially a PC and console company when the fastest growing part of the interactive entertainment business was mobile. And where it served a really broad audience, where it served, an audience that skewed female, and an audience that skewed older, as well as every other audience you can imagine. And Zynga was the natural property because, like Take-Two, it has a broad array of owned intellectual property, has a whole big number of hits, as Take-Two has a big number of hits. It's not beholden to 1, 2, or 3 titles. It wasn't then, it isn't now, less so now with, thankfully, with new hits. So it was a natural if you looked at the world that way. And even though certain elements of our mobile business haven't developed as quickly as we would like, and we had some challenges in business, which are, of course, public, it's a great, profitable business. And in the last year and a half, we've had some extraordinary success with the launch from Peak of Match Factory and from Rollick, most recently, of Color Block Jam. The hardest thing to do is make a new mobile hit. I think if you really look at it correctly, the only one created apart from the ones created at Zynga were Monopoly Go. by Scopely, which is massive, of course. But apart from that, not a lot going on in the mobile business, outside of China, that you can point to. So it's really exciting to see the green shoots of what we think Zynga can become as a leading part of Take-Two Interactive.
I'm sure there were also really dark moments. What were some of the biggest challenges?
That's such a great question. There's so many of them initially, but we had so much enthusiasm. I would say the biggest challenge was cultural. The president of the company is Carl Sleidoff. I've been working with Carl for 25 years. I'm the ultimate optimist. He's the ultimate pessimist. The culture of the company was really challenged when we took it over. It was reflected in the lack of compliance and the lack of performance. There were great pockets of talent inside the labels, but the corporation, right, outside the labels was really challenged. And just like table stakes, which is like you must tell the truth at all times. That was like a really new idea. One of the things I said and say in town halls, like, we don't have policies around here to speak of. There's only one thing that'll get you fired right away, and that is if you lie, you're getting fired. I can't make good decisions on bad information, A, and B, I don't want to work with liars. So we had a non-compliant company that we took over, not telling the truth. It was part of the game. So we had to really turn the culture to the culture that I had brought to every other entertainment business I've ever built up or turned around. And there have been many of them. And about 18 months in, Carl came into my office and he said, or 24 months in, it was too long. He said, I know you think you're going to embed your culture inside this company, but I have news for you. That's never going to happen. And thankfully he was wrong. And we have this amazing culture today. We have the lowest attrition rate in the business. We've extraordinarily low attrition. We've had zero compliance problems. We've never restated any financial figures in the entire time that we've been responsible for this business. But that was a dark moment, to answer your question. There were other dark moments, when we delayed the release of Grand Theft Auto 4. It was very newly on my watch, and I was supposed to have figured things out, and the spotlight was on me, and I was supposed to execute. And then, we delayed that title because it needed more time. And that was tough, and I was criticized for that. And then, of course, the global financial crisis, our stock went down by 50%. And we had some activists who were involved with us. That was super challenging. But look, we had, pretty tough activists, and, they were my friends when they showed up, and they were my friends when they left, and they got a terrific return on their investment. And actually, they're good board members. They were positive. They helped us out along the way. So, I think my job is to take a challenge and turn it into an opportunity. That's my job.
And on the topic of opportunity and excitement, you've spent time across so many media modalities, film, TV, as we learned, music as well, and then obviously interactive entertainment. Do you have any favorites? I'm hoping for one particular answer here, but...
Listen, I've enjoyed all of them, candidly. There's something really breathtaking about seeing the 20th Century Fox logo come up before a film and hearing that theme music. And as it happens, the logo that comes up now is a digital logo that I was responsible for overseeing the design of. So that was one of the things I did. And it's still the same one. And my initials are in there, by the way, embedded inside that logo.
Okay, we'll take a close look next time.
You can't see them. It's on one frame, digital frame. But so there's something thrilling about seeing a motion picture brought to life. I'm a musician by background, a bad one, but I love music. So hearing a great song, some incredible moments. I remember, Christina Aguilera performing acoustically in a conference room when we were trying to decide whether to sign her or not, or the fact that the first hit artist that we marketed with in turning around the RCA label, which had been losing money for 20 years when I took it over. Our first new artist was Dave Matthews, and he blew up, and that was the turnaround of RCA. I've had so many blessed moments in entertainment. They've all been great. I have to admit, I've spent the most time in interactive entertainment, and I love it because it's so hard to get it right. It's the intersection of, the graphics and the story and the technology and the gameplay and this ineffable thing called gameplay, all wrapped up in quality, and it's so hard to do. So that the challenge is really appealing to me. So I have to say, I probably am most compelled by that because it's so hard to get it right. But of course, I don't know, listening to a great song. I mean, boy, a song that makes you cry. Well, listen, there are video games that make you cry. Red Dead Redemption made me cry. It's just the emotion, the music, the sound effects. I mean, that was as emotional a piece of entertainment as I think I've ever witnessed in my life. So as you can see, I love all my children equally.
I think the good news is that games can be a nexus for the other media types. It's a lot easier putting film content or music into a game than putting a game into a song. By the way, great choice with Tom Petty for the GTA 6.
I didn't make the choice,
trailer.
but it sure was a great choice. The team did a great job.
Well, speaking of the complexity and the difficulty of the interactive entertainment business, how do you think about, running this business, balancing the investment that you make in, continuing to grow your existing franchises, which your consumers obviously love, but also investing in new IP for the future? How do you kind of navigate that?
It's the hardest thing that we do in the entertainment business because the risk profile of new intellectual property is so much greater than the risk profile of sequels, particularly in our case where our sequels tend to do really well. However, everything decays. Everything in life decays. All entertainment properties decay over time, even though it doesn't look like that at Take-Two. That's the state of affairs. So if you're not creating new hits, you're liquidating the business effectively. And, if you're selfish and short-sighted, and some people are, then the smartest thing you could do is don't make any new intellectual property. Just harvest what you got. And we've seen executives do that with predictable results. But what happens is those companies then cannot survive or thrive. And they eventually become zombies and go away. And you see it in every part of the entertainment business. In every entertainment business that I've turned around, run, or built up, and in certain instances I've done all three of those things inside one company, my view has been, look not to the next quarter, not to the next year, but 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road. And thankfully I do that because when I got to Take-Two, to the extent anyone cared, they assumed I was showing up to do a quick turnaround, a quick flip. And had we looked at the company that way, imagine where we'd be today. But my view was like, I'm here to build value permanently. Will I be in the chair permanently? Well, I feel pretty good, perhaps not permanently. But I should be building the company permanently. And I've been able to tell shareholders that. So even though I've been running public companies since I was 29, every time I sit with a public company CEO who's moaning about, the quarterly pressures on you, it's like, well, it all depends what you tell the market. And I tell my shareholders, look, we do not run this business based on a quarter or a year. We do not tailor our release schedule or even our investment based on quarterly results. We're building value over a long period of time. If you look at Take-Two's performance from 2007, when my team arrived, to today, it's extraordinary performance. Probably top 20 public securities, something like that, top 50, certainly, but I'm guessing top 20. But we had a 5-year period where that wasn't the case. We had a 5-year period where we didn't perform. We had a 2-year period where we went down naturally because it was a global financial crisis. If you're going to judge a company, any company, based on a quarter, or year, 2 years, well, good luck to you. That's a very hard way to create a return. But if you make a bet on a great team and a great business with great talent over a long period of time, and you support that bet through thick and thin, you can probably do okay. That's how I've always run these businesses.
Yeah, I think the magic is really also in building many things in parallel, as most good things come to an end eventually. And maybe on this note of entropy, we'll remind our listeners that this also comes to an end here. Luckily, we've diversified too. So if you like what you saw or heard today, you can go to lsvp.com/game-theory and check out all the other episodes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Strauss.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.